Subscribe to the channel here on the Oregon Football Report. If you love the Oregon Ducks and you don't want to miss out on any news or rumors flying around during transfer portal season, if you want free Duck videos every single day, hit that sub button. If you're going to hang out with me live on New Year's Day for the very first college football game of the 2026 season, or at least the very first one that matters, subscribe to the channel. If you love to sing, shout, not just between the third or fourth quarter, but just because you love the Ducks, hit that sub button. And you know what? The last reason why you should hit that sub button is because you want to see Dante Moore, Dan Lanning, Kenyon Sadiq, and the rest of this Oregon football team take us to our first national championship. All right, Duck fans, I am your host, Will Ortner, and we have got some transfer portal news. And you knew that there were going to be Oregon players that entered into the transfer portal. Justice Lowe had entered in the transfer portal last week, but I think there was a belief and there was a hope from many a Duck fan that most of the players were going to be able to hold off. Head coach Dan Lanning had said that he was trying to get his players to focus on the here and not now and not about the future. But unfortunately for the Ducks, a pair of defensive backs hit the transfer portal yesterday. The first one being Sione Laulea, and I hope I pronounced his name right. I've been practicing in the mirror for quite some time. He hit the transfer portal late last night, making it clear that he was no longer going to be with the Oregon football team. And about 30 minutes after the news broke that safety Kingston Lopa would be entering into the transfer portal as well. We're going to break down why both of those two players are going to go into the portal. More importantly, though, how their absence is going to affect the Oregon Ducks during this college football playoff run, because I trust Lanning and the rest of that defensive staff to come in and find new players either through the system that they already have in the program, that next step up mentality, either through some of our recruiting players, classes, and guys who are going to come in for that 2026 season, or go into the transfer portal and find some players that are even better themselves. But before we dive into that, I need you to join the Oregon Football Report Noti gang. You never want to miss any Oregon football news the minute that it breaks. We do come in here and make a video, so subscribe to the channel. But more importantly, turn on your notifications. We got 100 and some odd people in that Noti gang. Be the latest member to join up. All right, so that first transfer defensive back that we're going to have to talk about is Sione Laulea. Again, hope I pronounced his name correctly. One of the top transfer portal defensive backs. Previously, he was a JUCO guy over at San Mateo. He's played largely as a backup since he's been at Oregon. Again, it makes sense why he would enter into the transfer portal. I think there was a hope from Dan Lanning and the rest of the crew that he might hang around until after the Orange Bowl, because then obviously the transfer portal opens on January 2nd, and it wouldn't make any sense for him to hang out and wait there. Again, decent little year, but nothing to really write home about backup defensive back. Kingston Lopa, a backup safety for you, did see some time against JMU. Now, again, numbers aren't going to jump off the page. It's very rare that a starter is going to leave a program. In fact, a starter is probably not going to leave a program like Oregon unless there's someone that's clearly going to step in and take over that spot. So it doesn't shock me that Kingston Lopa looks at his situation and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a pretty darn good safety for someone else. I should enter into that portal. But there was some hope that they might hang out until after you played that Orange Bowl. So here's the problem. This is going to be a big deal, or it could potentially be right now. You're not losing starters, right? Like Flowers is still going to be there. Thienemann's going to be there. I still have a belief that you are going to start seeing Trey McNutt get more and more time, but these moves could be a big deal at that defensive back position because you've already seen a bunch of different players enter into the portal. And this defense, I get it. It was a lot of second-string guys. It was the second half against JMU where the ball game was over. But let's not act like that defense was lights out in that second half. I understand why Tosh Lapoy was upset as the defensive coordinator. I understand why Bryce Betcher and Dylan Thienemann were upset as your senior leaders. I understand why Dan Lanning was upset as a defensive-minded head coach. This Oregon football defense needs to play better, and if the Ducks get an injury here or an injury there, all of a sudden some of those depth pieces just aren't quite as strong. Now, there are some people that are coming out after both of those players saying, how dare they leave their team in the middle of a playoff run? I disagree with that, and I think that if that is your take, you are dumb because you don't understand what the schedule is. So how would you fix the transfer portal? Would you fix it to the point where no one can transfer anymore and we go back to the old ways? Would you fix the scheduling of it so that players didn't have to enter into the transfer portal until after the season was over? So transfer portal season kind of started more so around that February, March time. How would you fix it? Let me know down below in the comments. I'm always reading. I'm always trying to respond to as many Duck fans as I possibly can. So you might ask yourself, again, I went through a couple of reasons why this could hurt the Ducks, but you might say, hey, Will, who cares, man? We got some really good defensive backs playing for the Ducks right now. We're going to play a Texas Tech team that is not known for their offense. Really good defense, not quite a strong offense, but more importantly, we have dudes that are already there. Here's the problem. Here are your defensive backs that have already entered into the portal. Not players that have entered into the transfer portal, defensive backs that have entered into the transfer portal. You've seen both of our guys, Lopa and Laulea, that have entered. Florence entered earlier, Fields and Davis also entered. So you're looking at a team that right now is an injury away from playing someone that might not have been the backup, might not be necessarily ready for prime time, might have been a person who was going to be a third stringer or someone who wasn't supposed to see a ton of action in the college football playoff. What I think is important, though, is those players are leaving the Ducks because they are backups and because they know that there's a potential for them to get passed over either by Dan Lanning going into the portal and grabbing someone, or, and I think this is the more likely option, the young players are really starting to step up. Peyton Woodard has been very good as a defensive back. Trey McNutt, I've already gone on about how I think he's going to be a gift for this team to get him back. And that's not even going to look at the next recruiting class that the Ducks have, which is already loaded with defensive back talent. So it is a future problem that you probably already have a fix for, but in the here and now, in the most important time of your season, the 2025-2026 playoff run, you are thin in your defensive back room. The Ducks have to stay healthy. This is a defense that is good, but could definitely be slightly improved. They cannot allow a player to get injured because if they do, we are looking at a very, very thin group there for the Oregon Ducks. I still think that we're going to be okay, but I'll tell you what, it does worry me if a player were to go down like a Flowers, like a Thieneman. Are you going to be okay in that defensive back room? Are you worried about the latest Ducks to hit the transfer portal? Not necessarily about them leaving, going somewhere else and, administering some punishment to you in the next season, but are you worried about the depth that the Ducks have? Are you worried about the roster? Type yes if you are, type no if you're not. And please let me know your reasoning for that. Cite it MLA style, not necessarily, but just at least comment. Let me know what's going on there. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. Subscribe to the Oregon Football Report. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers, less than 200 away. Help us out. Come on in and hit that sub button. And while you're there, go click that little bell. You can see it. It's right there. Hit that little bell. You'll get a notification every time that we have an Oregon Duck football video coming your way. And then you'll never miss the latest news or rumors. You'll never be caught by surprise on what's going on with the Oregon football team. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it here. Let's go Ducks.